The Highland Railway was a vital link for Scotland's remote and rugged north, connecting scattered communities and driving progress through some of the most challenging landscapes in Britain. Its locomotives were built to endure steep gradients, harsh weather, and long, lonely stretches of track, playing a key role in the region's development. While some of these engines became icons of their time, others quietly disappeared into the annals of history, their stories overshadowed by newer, more modern engines. Yet these unsung machines carried the lifeblood of the Highlands, their wheels forging a path through the wild, untamed beauty of the north. Today we'll uncover 7 of the Highland Railway's long-forgotten locomotives, exploring their unique features, contributions, and showcase why any one of these engines might just be the right fit for the next ready-to-run tooling. The arrival and success of Rapido's Jone's goods has been nothing short of absolutely awesome. It's great to see a Scottish locomotive in the ready-to-run format, and as many have suggested, including myself, the box labelled Scottish Legends. It implies that Rapido might tackle some further Scottish engines in the future. They recently put out a post on Instagram asking for a couple of suggestions, so naturally I decided to make an entire video with my suggestions. Now today we're going to look specifically at the Highland Railway, and while there are many great Scottish engines across many different railway companies in the region, our specific focus today will be on the Highland Railway. Today I'm going to be talking directly to Rapido. However, if you do feel like there's a company that should be making these models instead, door is open, drop your comments below and let's have a chat about it. And stick around until the end of the video to find out which railway company I'll be highlighting next so that you can drop your suggestions for it. Without further ado, let's dive into 7 models that we desperately need in ready-to-run format from the Highland Railway. By the way, if this is your first time watching, my name's Hilton and this is Proper Chuffed. Welcome to the channel and I hope you enjoyed this content. The Highland Railway River Class was a fleet of 8 460 steam locomotives designed by Christopher Cumming and built between 1915 and 1918. Named after Scottish rivers, they were created to handle express passenger services on the Highland Railway's challenging routes. With outside cylinders, Walschaerts valve gear, and superheated boilers, the River Class offered improved efficiency and reliability compared to earlier designs like the Castle and Clan classes. They performed well on key routes, particularly between Inverness and Perth, despite limitations imposed by the railway's small loading gauge. After the 1923 grouping, the River Class continued service under the LMS, but was gradually replaced by more powerful steam locomotives, with the last withdrawn in the early 1940s. None were preserved, but they are remembered as a significant step forward in meeting the demands of express passenger service work on the Highland Railway. The Highland Railway's Sky Bogie class was a fleet of 240 steam locomotives designed by David Jones and rolled out between 1887 and 1895. Built for mixed traffic duties, these engines were right at home on the Highland Railway's rough terrain, especially on the demanding West Highland line to the Kyle of Lachalsh. That's how they got their nickname, thanks to their work on the Isle of Skye route. With a 240 wheel arrangement and a trailing bogie for extra stability, they handled tight curves and steep gradients like pros. Their design was all about keeping things simple and reliable, which made them perfect for the job. Some even featured upgraded boilers in their lifetime. The Sky bogies earned their reputation for being versatile and dependable, sticking around well into the early 20th century. When the 1923 railway grouping happened, they joined the LMS roster, but were gradually phased out as newer, more powerful engines took over. By the 1930s, the last of them had been retired. Now, the Sky Bogie is probably my favorite Highland Railway locomotive. It has so much character. It has that very typical looking David Jones design, but it sort of bridges that gap between the sort of Victorian era, turn of the century steam locomotive design. I think it's really characterful, it's got loads of potential, and there are numerous liveries for this one. Next up, let's take a look at another one of David Jones's designs. The Highland Railway Jones tank was a sturdy little steam locomotive designed by David Jones and introduced in 1894. These engines were built to tackle shunting and branch line work, where their compact size and tough design really shone. Jones tanks were super nimble, perfect for tight curves and cramped spaces. Their straightforward 2-cylinder setup and no-fuss construction made them reliable and easy to maintain. These dependable workhorses were a vital part of the Highland Railway, serving well into the early 20th century. After the 1923 grouping, they joined the LMS2, but were gradually replaced by newer engines. By the 1940s, the last of them had been retired. They are fondly remembered for their reliability and adaptability, helping keep the Highland Railway running smoothly day in and out. So while it's great to have these larger designs, I think a smaller engine like the Jones tank is a far more versatile little option. For those modelling both the Highland Railway and of course the LMS in the northern region, the Jones tank fits right in. And once again, it carries that same design style that David Jones was so well known for. Again, blending that line between the Victorian and turn of the century steam era design. I, for one, would absolutely love to see this one made. Next up, let's take a look at the Highland Railway's Clan class. The Highland Railway Clan class was a set of 10 460 steam locomotives, also designed by Christopher Cumming and introduced between 1919 and 1921. Built for express passenger services, these engines were specifically designed to tackle the Highland Railway's challenging routes. True to tradition, they were named after Scottish clans, giving them a bit of Highland flair. With their 460 wheel arrangement, outside cylinders and superheated boilers, the clans had the power and efficiency to handle steep gradients and tight curves. They were a step up from the earlier designs like the Castle class, offering more muscle for hauling heavy passenger services over longer distances. The clans also joined the LMS after the 1923 grouping and built a solid reputation for reliability. They were gradually shifted to less demanding duties and eventually retired by the early 1950s. A slightly more conventional design, almost Grizzly-like in some ways, the Clan class is well suited to early pre-grouping layouts, as well as, of course, Highland Railway layouts. And I think the various liveries, as well as different clan names, make it a very versatile option for modelers. Next up, we head into the mountains as we take a look at the Ben class. The Highland Railway Ben class was a fleet of 8 440 steam locomotives and introduced between 1898 and 1899. Named after Scottish mountains, or bens, these engines were built for express passenger services, particularly on the challenging Inverness to Perth route. With a 440 wheel arrangement, inside cylinders and Stephenson valve gear, the Ben class was designed to balance power with stability. They handled steep gradients and sharp curves with ease thanks to their relatively larger boilers, which provided plenty of steam and good efficiency for the time. The Bens were reliable and elegant machines, forming the backbone of the Highland Railway's passenger services for many years. After the 1923 grouping, they also continued under the LMS, but were eventually phased out by the late 1940s. The Bens are absolutely beautiful and very simplistic engines, and as I mentioned with the Clan class, various liveries and different Ben names give it a lot of versatility. The Highland Railway's Duke class, originally known as the Bruce class, was a series of 440 steam locomotives introduced in 1874. Designed for mixed traffic work, they were built to handle the Highland Railway's challenging routes. The first 10 locomotives were constructed by Dubbs & Co. in 1874, with an additional 7 built at the railway's Loch Gorm works between 1876 and 1888. To avoid confusion with the later Bruce class, these locomotives were renamed the Duke class. Under Peter Drummond's 1901 classification scheme, they were designated as Class Fs. Their design reflected the engineering priorities of the time, prioritizing simplicity and durability to meet the demands of the line. Despite their utility, the Duke class gradually became outdated as more powerful and modern locomotives entered service. They were phased out rather early during the 20th century, with none of them surviving into preservation. Next up, another David Jones design. Let's take a look at the Highland Railway Loch class. The Highland Railway Loch class was a group of 440 steam locomotives also designed by David Jones and introduced in 1896. Named after Scottish lochs, these engines were built to tackle express passenger services on routes full of steep gradients and tight curves. With a 440 wheel arrangement, inside cylinders and Stephenson valve gear, the Loch class combined power and reliability. Their large boilers and sturdy build made them ideal for the tough demands of the Highland Railway. Many were later upgraded with superheated boilers, boosting efficiency and keeping them in service longer. After the 1923 grouping, the Loch class joined the LMS fleet. They carried on with secondary passenger duties for a while, but were gradually phased out. By the 1940s, the last of them had been retired. It's very hard not to like the David Jones design language. His engines are what I would call shapely. They are well proportioned and compact, and very pleasing on the eye overall. Again, you have a variation of liveries and different loch names, so the door is wide open for the loch class. It's time to look at the final engine on this list, and one that quite a few people seem to be quite interested in. So let's see if Rapido will tackle the Highland Railway Strath Class. Our final engine is the Highland Railway Strath Class, a series of 10 440 steam locomotives also designed by David Jones and introduced between 1892 and 1895. Built for express passenger services, they were named after Scottish straths, or valleys, reflecting the railway's tradition of regional pride in locomotive naming. The straths featured a 440 wheel arrangement and Stephenson valve gear. They had relatively small boilers by later standards, but their lightweight and compact design made them well suited for the Highland Railway. Despite their modest size, they were capable performers, providing reliable service on key passenger routes. After the 1923 grouping, the Straths became part of the LMS fleet. However, their age and limited power output saw them gradually withdrawn from service, with the last examples retired by the mid-1930s. Now, if you look at them side by side, the Highland Railway Strath Class and the Sky Bogie are almost very similar designs, sharing a lot of the same characteristics, including the very ornate mud splashes. If Rapido decided to tackle either the Strath Class or the Highland Railway Sky Bogie, I think we'd all be pretty happy about that, to be honest with you. So there you have it, guys. 7 Highland Railway locomotives that we really need in ready-to-run format. And I love that this is getting a lot of traction now, that people are talking about the Highland Railway, and that most manufacturers are actually approaching the pre-grouping era with a lot more seriousness now too. It's really great to see because there are so many undiscovered gems that are waiting to be made in that ready-to-run tooling. Granted, they're not all going to be super popular, but with the level of quality and detail we have these days, each of these models is bound to be something special. I'd love to know which of these you think should be made in a ready-to-run tooling, or if you have another Highland Railway suggestion, please drop it in the comments below. Next time we'll be tackling the Caledonian Railway, so if you have some suggestions for that, drop them in the comments too, and I'll happily consider them when I put together my list. Regardless, I hope you've enjoyed this and learned something about the Highland Railway too. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up, that would be really great, and until I see you next time, keep your engines fired and stay on track. All the best.